Hello everybody, welcome to Totally Tabled. My name is Shaggy, and today I'm doing a playthrough of Nippon Zaibatsu using the new expansion, Enlightener Genro. This video has been sponsored by Crowd Games. That means they paid me to make this video to show you how this expansion plays. They're running a Kickstarter campaign beginning on June 23rd, so if you're interested, please click the link in the description below for more information. Now, as you can see, I have everything set up for a solo game of Zaibatsu with the Nippon Genro expansion. Keep in mind, this is a prototype of the expansion, along with my personal copy of the game. The final product might include rule and component changes, so make sure to check out the campaign page for details. Genro were influential elder statesmen in Japan. Trusted advisors who helped shape the nation's industrial transformation during the middle of the 19th century. This expansion includes 5 different genro, and players will either pick or randomly select 2 to play with each game. For this game, I'll be playing with the Legislator and the Regulator, which is the recommended pair for your first game. Each genro is completely different from the others, with their own rules and unique effect on the game. The other 3 are the Enlightener, the Lawkeeper, and the Exporter. I'll briefly go over each of these later in the video. Broadly speaking, each genro provides a negative obstacle that the players have to overcome, as well as potential bonuses for interacting with them. For example, with the Legislator, you have those 4 petals that you can put out in a random order. Each petal refers to an action on the board. So you have trains, machines, factories, and boats. You're going to start the game with the petal in the upper right corner. You place the marker on the middle bonus, and then you take the penalty token and you place it on that action, which I've already done. So in this case, every train that we build is going to cost an extra coal. By interacting with the Legislator, we can spend either 1, 3, or 6 money in order to move the marker 1, 2, or 3 spaces clockwise, and then we can collect the bonus wherever it lands. So let's say I spent $6 to move that marker 3 spaces. I would land on the spot that would just give me a machine to build. We would remove the train penalty and put on the new penalty for building machines. Now building machines costs $5 and an iron. When it moves onto the factory pedal, it'll cause factories to cost $2 more. And when we move on to the boat pedal, boats will cost a silk, in addition to either 3 iron or $5 and 1 iron. And that's how that works. That just keeps going around and around. Now you're probably asking yourself, how do you interact with these genro? Well, that's why we've put this tile onto the board. You just use that to cover up the existing serve a local market action spot. And this is showing that when you take that action, you'll service one of these local markets. Normally, when you put your influence token out there, you can either take 2 points, or you can take whatever bonus that region provides, in this case, 2 coal. Or now, with this expansion, you have a third option, which is to interact with one of the genro. And the way you would do that is you would take one of these new markers, these little envelope markers. There's a dark side and a light side. You'd look at the type of good that you provided. So in this case, we did paper. And you'd look at, how many boxes you sent. So, you got to look at that grid. For the case of the 1, it would have been 1 box. Let's say I did a 2. So that would be 2 boxes. Then we'd pick either the Legislator or the Regulator. Let's say I go down here to the Regulator, and we just place our marker in that spot as long as it's empty. So 2 boxes and the paper. Now, if it's empty below where you placed your marker, then you move it down, right? So they're going to be sort of stacking up on top of each other. Then when you're sort of fully done taking your action, you'll come here, you'll flip that over to the light side. Any of them that you have that are dark, you'll flip to the light side, and that will let you interact with, in this case, the Regulator. So here, let's go to the Legislator. Since I've explained them, that would let us do this, to spend either 1, 3, or 6 money to move that marker 1, 2, or 3 spaces clockwise and get the bonus. That then stays there, and it provides an influence with the legislature, and at the end of each period, you'll score points if you have the most influence. You can see the points right there. Just the same way that at the end of each period, we score for influences in the different regions. These are kind of like 2 other different regions that we're battling for influence. So how does the regulator work? Well, to set up the regulator, you're going to take these markers and you're going to shuffle them up and you're going to randomly put them out in these spaces. You'll be left with 1 left over, which you can just put back into the box. The 3 tiles to the left, those are in the queue, and you're going to use those in order to set the initial location of these tracks. So first we're going to look at that top tile, and you can see there it has both black and green on it. That means we're going to move either the black track or the green track forward 1 based on whichever one is furthest back. Now here at the start, they're tied. So in this case, the tie goes to whichever marker is higher. So the black track is higher than the green track, so we move black ahead 1. Then we go to the second tile. It has both white and green. So once again, they're tied. It would go to the one which is ever furthest back, but they're tied. And white is higher up, so white moves ahead 1. Then we go to the bottom one. It is also black and green, but this time the green is further back. So we're going to move it forward 1. So in the end, we've moved them all forward 1 space. Now that could be very different depending on what showed up on the queue. To finish setup, we need to look at these tracks and compare them to our own tracks. So the R&D track here, it's pointing at the number 2, but our R&D starts at 1. So this one is higher. We then look at the coal track, it's pointing at a 3. Our current coal is 2, so it's also higher. And then the income track is pointing at a 13. Our current income is 12. So all 3 of these tracks are higher than our own. That means we take this lock and we put it 3 spaces down on our worker track. If only 2 of them were higher, we'd put it in the middle location there. If only 1 was higher, we'd put it in the top location. But since all 3 ended up being higher, we put it right here. And remember I talked about negative obstacles? This is the negative obstacle for the regulator. This token is limiting the number of available spaces for our workers. At the moment, we only have 3 spaces for our workers before we'd have to consolidate. In order to move this up and off of our board entirely, we need to get our tracks at least equal or greater than the tracks here on the regulator. So let's say I took an action and I increased my R&D up to the 2 level. It's now equal to the regulator. I now only have 2 tracks that are behind. So I get to move that up 1. If I can get my coal up, now I only have 1 track that's behind the regulator, so that gets to move up. And then if I can get this up, all of my tracks are either equal or greater, so then I can move this completely off my board. Now here's the trick. At the end of each round, we're going to again look at the queue and move these tracks up. And so this lock can come back at the end of each round, depending on how far these move up and where our tracks are. So throughout the entire game, we're going to have to keep moving our tracks up and keep pace with this, or we will have some restriction on how many workers we can play before consolidation. I should also mention with the legislature, at the end of each round, we're going to just move that marker 2 spaces clockwise. That way it just sort of keeps it moving around. Okay, so that explains the penalty of the regulator. What about the benefit? Well, let's go back to our little example here where we're going to put out our 2 influence here with paper. Right, it's going to go here, but then because this is empty, it drops down. Then at the end, we flip this up, and now we can interact. We're going to look at the grid, and we're going to look at what good we delivered. in that case, paper. And we're just going to go up and look at the either topmost tile, or if we were looking at one of these, we'd look at the rightmost tile. So in that case, it looks like we can spend $3 to build a train. So we could do that. We'd then remove it. We'd put it at the top of the queue, pushing everything down. We would then slide either that row, or in this case, the column, up. And then the bottom tile of the queue moves over to fill the spot. Let's say we did cotton instead. We would look at the rightmost one. That would actually let us build a ship for $3. And then the same thing, that would go on top. Because we took it from that row, we'd push the row to the right, and then we'd fill in with the bottom tile. And there we go, it's that simple. Now let's talk about the solo mode and how the automa deals with the expansion. Basically, anytime the automa takes the serve a local market action, they will get to place either 1 or 2 loyalty tokens on the Genro. These are the loyalty tokens. So basically, they're just going to look to see what good they place their influence on. And then that will be the good where they play their marker, always on the lowermost space and light side up. Basically, if they have the same number or less loyalty tokens on a board, they'll play there. If they have more loyalty tokens on both boards, then they'll just go by priority order. So as part of setup at the beginning of the game, when you place out these markers onto the board, you'll take the other 2 and randomly place them on these boards. And so according to priority here, you can see gray is ahead of blue. So if they were ahead in both of these, they'd just play 1 to this board. Now, if they're equal or losing on both boards, sort of like right now at the beginning, then they have to decide whether they're just going to play on one of them or play on both. And it depends on what action tile they flipped over in order to take that action. So for example, if they flipped over this token, which is the worker action, there's that one, and here's another one. This action means that they're just going to take from the spot that has the most. And if they're all tied like they are at the beginning of the game, they're going to go based on this arrow. So this means they would start at the right and look for the one that is tied. So if this came out at the beginning of the game, they would take a worker from the serve a local market spot. When they take a worker from that spot, even if it's just using this, you're going to look at the color on the tile. This is green. And you can see here, we're playing an easy, medium, or hard game, depending on how many of these solo objectives we put out. In this case, we're just playing a medium game. But this is green. So that means that in an easy game, or in a medium game, or in a hard game, we would actually activate the location that they took the worker from. You can see with the previous one, that's just showing this hard location. So only in a hard game would they then activate the location that they took the worker from. And that only applies to either the serve a local market or the train. Those are the only 2 actions that they do, right? The automa doesn't do any of the other actions. They just put out trains and serve the local market. But so if we were to draw this and they took it from either the train spot or the serve a local market, because we're not playing a hard game, we would just take the worker, we wouldn't activate the spot. Now I'm saying all that because if they end up activating the spot because of this worker action, then they're only going to place 1 loyalty token, and they'll do it in priority order. If it's actually the market action tile, which let me find. No, this one. If it's that one, then they'll put a marker on both. I realize that's a little complicated, but hopefully that made sense. Now, when the automa interacts with the legislator, they're just going to move the marker to the nearest middle space, obviously moving clockwise. So if the marker was where it is right now, they'd move it to there. Very simple. For the regulator, it's also pretty simple. They're going to just do exactly what we did, what I showed off, depending on what good they placed out, depending on where they put their influence marker. The only tricky one is if they do a level 3 good. So if they do the clocks or the light bulbs, because in that case you have a choice of 2 different ones. The way they're going to decide is they're going to look at their priority board. They're going to see which of the 2 colors is a higher priority. So in this case, the gray is the higher priority. And what I've done as part of setup is I've placed the meeple on the first board in the horizontal direction and this one in the vertical direction. So because it's gray and is vertical, they're going to pick the column. But if the blue had been a higher priority, then because it's sideways, they would pick the row. If any of that was a little bit confusing, hopefully it'll make more sense once you see it in action as I play. So let me briefly go over the other 3 Genro that come in the expansion. This is the Enlightener. When you interact with the Enlightener, you can move one of your tokens along this track. So maybe I would move this one. And you can see here I've entered a bronze region, so that means I can get one of the bronze rewards. There's those on the furthest right. So I get an iron or a coal or a silk or 2 money. The problem is, as I move on these tracks, you can see that there are penalties that are in these boxes up here. Those penalties apply to these specific types of factories. So now if I wanted to build a clock factory, I'd have to spend 2 silk. Now the other thing is when you enter this space, the first person to enter that space, you can see there's 4 of them, and then there's 4 there. That requires you to push one of the other tracks to the left, 1 space. So I could do something like that. And that's now changing the punishment, and it's also changing the potential rewards that you could get. Next time maybe I move here, I can get one of the silver rewards. You can always get one that's less. Then if I were to move here again, I'd have to push another thing. And so you just keep going on like that. For the automa, you're going to take some of the leftover factory tiles. You're going to sort of shuffle them together. And you're going to use those to determine which track the automa moves on and which track it pushes and stuff like that. This is the Lawkeeper. When you interact with the Lawkeeper, you spend either 1, 2, or 3 money to take one of those tiles. You then place it out on this grid, and you get the bonus of whatever you cover. In addition, you take one of these, they're called strikers. You take them from either of these top 2 positions, so either of these 3. So I could take like this blue and bring it down here to the bottom. This is how the lawmaker penalizes you. The color worker that's in the top section there, in this case white, that color worker will not give you its bonus when you consolidate. The 2 here in the middle, those won't give you the bonus when you consolidate if it's the top worker. If it's the bottom worker, it still will, but if it's the top worker, it won't. And then the 3 down here, they'll give you their bonus when you consolidate, regardless if it's the top or the bottom. Then you just fill in the gaps and refill. And yeah, it's that simple. When the automa player interacts with the Lawkeeper, 1, they always take the top worker and place them at the bottom. And then they always take the top bonus tile. And then there's a process to figure out where it's going to place it. It's going to look to cover specific bonuses, and then there's also a chart on the back of the rule book that shows exactly how it breaks ties using its priority. But in a nutshell, that's how the Lawkeeper works. Lastly, we have the exporter, which is the most complicated of the 5 in the box. I'm not going to go over everything, but basically the way it works is when you interact with the exporter, you can place one of your own colored boxes into one of these sections. These represent 3 different types of special goods. You have a level 1, 2, and 3, which sort of correspond to the levels of the factories. In order to play into this top box, you need to have a mining level of at least 2, which is where you start. And then you need a 4 for the next one and a 6 for the next one. Just like with R&D, how you can spend silk in order to get a temporary increase, you can do the same thing with coal. You can spend 1, 3, and 6 coal to get a temporary 1, 2, and 3 level boost in order to be able to play in these areas. When you do this, you can put in 1 for free, and then you can put in a second one if you want by spending whatever is required. So for this top one, either an iron or a silk. This would be an iron, and that's a silk. And what's cool is you can use these special goods in a variety of different ways. You can use them for your contracts. So when you're putting out contracts, you need, 1, 2, and then 3 different types of goods. You can use these for that. But you can also use these to make special deliveries, which are over here. And so when taking that contract action, rather than, doing the regular contracts, you can do the special contract. You take one of these, and then you'll just get the reward. Now the penalty is over here. You get this penalty when you consolidate. So at the start, you can see at the very top there, you just have to pay an extra $1. Just 1 extra money, that's it, when you consolidate. Once the last of those loyalty tokens is removed, then you're going to get the second penalty instead. And these are randomized. So in this case, it would be 1 iron. And if you don't have the iron to spend, you instead lose 2 victory points. When it gets to the third one there, it has a ×2 by it. So in this case, you would lose 2 coal. And then at the very bottom, it would be 3 silk. So as you make these special orders, you're filling these spaces up. If an entire column gets filled up, then you redistribute those back out here and then onto the loyalty board. And the Automa will also get to place these out. There's a whole system for how it decides what to take and stuff, and I'm not going to get into that here. So there you go. That's at least a taste of all 5 of the Genro that come in the expansion.